Hello and welcome back to the Movie Memo Recaps. Today we are going to recap a 2016 movie titled The Last Heist. Please be advised that there will be spoilers ahead. In the opening scene, a group of robbers is plotting to rob a bank that is about to close because one of its safes contains $100 million. Now, the criminal's van is parked in front of the bank, waiting for the driver's signal to exit and begin the robbery. However, he notices a well-dressed man on the sidewalk, holding a suitcase and wearing black sunglasses. The man comes to a stop and peers suspiciously at the driver for 5 seconds before continuing walking and entering the bank. The stranger, whose name turns out to be Bernard, informs the assistant manager, Danny, that he wishes to place a deposit in his safe. Danny warns him that the bank is closing and that all customers should empty their safes, else, the feds would take their belongings and contact them later. Bernard doesn't seem to want to deal with the feds and says he wants to pick up everything right now. Shortly, Mrs. Waxman, a furious customer, and the bank manager enter the room. They tell Bernard to wait, pointing to Cynthia, the woman who had been waiting for her turn for hours. Bernard approaches Cynthia, removes his sunglasses, and, after staring at her intently, persuades her to give up her seat to him. Outside, the robbers don skeleton masks to evade detection, gather their weapons, and depart from the van. They break into the bank, but before they tie up the hostages, Cynthia conceals a phone. The robbers count the hostages and find that 2 have departed from the chamber. Danny escorts Bernard to his safe. Bernard requests Danny's departure due to the personal nature of his belongings, but Danny argues that regulations forbid him from doing so. Soon after, Danny hears gunfire upstairs and immediately rushes to investigate. Left alone, Bernard opens the safe, revealing only jars containing human eyes. Bernard, also known as Window, is a legendary serial killer who deprives his victims of their eyes in order to give them to God, since they represent the soul's windows. Meanwhile, Danny catches up with the robbers, and their boss, Paul, identifies him as his brother. Paul apologizes to Danny and removes his disguise. He tells the other robbers that the bank shut off the surveillance cameras a week ago, so they remove their masks. Tracy, one of them, goes to the vault to grab the final captive and break into the safe containing the $100 million. 2 others, Ally and AJ, accompany the prisoners to another room and keep a watch on them. During the robbery, AJ discovers that Ally and Tracy want to kill all of the hostages, despite Paul's request that there be no victims. While in the room, Danny asks Cynthia for her phone, and texts 911 for assistance. AJ and Ally make their way back to the room, but Danny skillfully conceals the phone. Meanwhile, in town, while Detective Pascal orders a taco from a street vendor, receives word about a robbery in progress. She immediately heads to the local bank to investigate the situation. Tracy finally breaks into the safe, places all of the money in a bag, and notifies Paul. She exits the vault but notices a strange noise. When she returns, she discovers the missing captive, Bernard, who has been hiding in an air vent. Bernard suggests that the woman should let him go, as he has gathered all his possessions. Tracy, on the other hand, is interested in checking the man's bag. She stands still in misery before so many human eyes, and Bernard seizes the opportunity to strike her. Tracy tries to fight back, but Bernard slashes the artery on her arm and tells her she only has 9 minutes to live. Rick, the van driver who has remained outside to watch the road, spots Pascal's police car and another patrol car approaching the bank. He informs Paul, who conceals the masks and guns. The detective and 2 police officers knock on the door, and Paul answers it, pretending to be the bank manager. He informs them that they are closing and that there is no robbery going on. The woman cannot enter without a warrant, but she does not believe Paul's narrative, so she photographs him, mails it to the station, and then proceeds to Rick's van. The driver conceals the narcotics on the dashboard, but the detective notices him and orders him to get out of the vehicle. Tracy attempts to shoot Bernard with the gun, but fails due to her lack of strength. When the detective hears bullets fired from the bank, she becomes distracted. Panicked, Rick takes advantage of the circumstances to flee. Paul opens the door to allow him in, but Rick reaches for the gun to ward off the officers, but the woman shoots him in the chest. As the 2 comrades open fire on the officers, Paul takes Rick inside to treat him and advises the bald comrade, Briggs, that it is time for Plan B, which is to use the upper elevator to reach a secret exit. Meanwhile, Tracy bleeds to death, and Bernard slices out her eyes before fleeing. Briggs approaches AJ and Ally on the stairs and informs them of Rick's condition, prompting the woman to immediately assume that Danny has contacted the police. After that, Briggs goes upstairs, takes an axe from his bag, and begins smashing the front wall to reveal the elevator. Paul enters the bank vault and discovers Tracy's lifeless body on the floor. He informs the others that the missing captive killed her and is now attempting to escape through the air vents. Ally suggests that they find Bernard and kill him, but Paul tells her that they don't have much time and must take the money and flee. Mrs. Waxman needs to use the restroom in the captive room, so she gets Ally to accompany her. Downstairs, her partner Washington questions Paul about what happened between him and his brother. He reveals that they were close and pleased when they were younger, but their paths diverged when they joined different military units. Meanwhile, Ally is waiting outside the bathroom for Mrs. Waxman but observes she hasn't emerged. The woman opens the door and finds the lady dead, sitting on the toilet without eyes, and the killer has also passed through the bathroom vent. Ally believes the man is hiding in one of the bathrooms, but she can't find him and chooses to join AJ. On her way out, Bernard grabs her shoulders, pushes her to the ground, and stabs her in the chest, killing her instantly. AJ is talking to Danny, wondering what Ally is doing, when he notices noises coming from the air duct. Meanwhile, numerous police cars are circling the bank. Paul approaches Briggs and AJ for an update, and AJ informs him that Ally has not returned from the bathroom and is most likely dead. One of the police officers has linked to the radio frequencies used by the thieves to communicate via walkie-talkies and calls the detective to listen in on their conversation. Overhearing AJ and Paul's chat, the woman discovers that the thieves are in the same institution as the serial killer she has been searching for years. Paul, desperate, emerges from the bank unarmed and requests that the detective settle the situation gently. The woman accepts the request and inquires about the total number of hostages and thieves. Paul dismisses her questions and requests that she send him a school bus and a doctor for Rick within 2 hours. If they don't, Paul threatens to kill the hostages. The detective admits that he does not strike her as the type of person who would kill someone, despite the fact that he was formerly a soldier. Paul claims to have served in the Marine Corps, while the woman claims her husband was also a soldier who perished in an explosion in Baghdad. The detective admits to Paul that she doesn't understand why people like him, who have survived a war, don't start a better life instead of turning to crime. The woman eventually accepts Paul's plan, and he promises to hand over the captives in exchange for her and her team's cooperation. Detective Pascal directs 2 officers to enter via the window behind the bank and update her on the situation. Paul returns to the bank, instructing Washington to join AJ on the upper floor and prepare the hostages. Washington persuades Danny to stabilize Rick so that the doctor can come in time to treat him. Meanwhile, the detective and her employer squabble over the simplicity of Paul's request, apprehensive of potential exploitation. A big black van interrupts them, revealing a DoD squad brought in by SWAT. Sinclair is the team's leader, and he claims to have been trying to catch Paul for years. Detective Pascal asks him what Paul is attempting to steal if the bank is closing, and he tells her that there is $100 million cartel money in the vault. Smith, one of Sinclair's men and a doctor, enters the bank to cure Rick. Paul recognizes him and brings him upstairs as a captive. He, in turn, grabs Cynthia and Rick and hands them over to the cops. AJ binds Smith to the chair and tells him to stand still if he doesn't want to die. A few moments later, Bernard descends from the room's shaft and approaches. Smith begs AJ to shoot him before it's too late, but he hesitates due to fear. Bernard asserts that they are all sinners, and upon hearing God's voice, he realized the importance of gathering as many souls as possible. He accomplishes this by removing the eyeballs of his own victims. AJ loads his weapon and prepares to shoot Bernard. Meanwhile, Sinclair's sniper, Chen, stands over the building in front of the bank, aiming at AJ, believing Bernard is just another captive. As AJ is about to pull the trigger, a bullet passes through his skull, leaving Bernard and Smith alone in the room. Sinclair, his partner Jones, and Pascal burst into the bank. Everyone starts firing, and Washington is killed by one of the troops. When the firing stops, Sinclair asks Paul if he stole all the money. The detective doesn't comprehend what's going on, so Paul informs her that Sinclair is also a cartel member. Meanwhile, Briggs, who has triggered the elevator, hears gunfire and rushes to Paul. In the next room, however, he comes across Smith's eyeless dead body. The latter attempts to warn Briggs to flee but lacks the strength to make himself understood. Bernard approaches Briggs from behind and strikes him with his axe. The detective tries to arrest Sinclair's downstairs, having learned of his connection with the cartels. The detective dispatches 2 officers who arrive from upstairs, but Jones kills them. Paul takes advantage of his distraction, hitting and killing him. The manager notices a weapon beside him and attempts to grab it to rescue himself, but Sinclair murders him without hesitation. The detective threatens to shoot Sinclair if he does not drop the weapon, but he attempts to persuade her to split the money. When she refuses, Chen catches her off guard and shoots her. Danny and Paul are the only survivors and know they will lose to Chen and Sinclair. Paul gives up, but Sinclair apologizes and murders him. They intend to kill Danny as well, but the detective uses her last remaining strength to kill Chen and shoot Sinclair as well. He survives, however, and escapes upstairs, where he meets the dead and eyeless Smith, AJ and Briggs. Danny uses scissors to free himself before taking the detective's gun and going after Sinclair to kill him. Sinclair escapes inside the vault via elevator. While hunting for an exit, he stumbles across the killer, who beats him down and stabs him. Sinclair attempts to shoot Bernard, but he escapes in time, leaving him alone with a knife stuck in his shoulder. Danny also arrives at the vault and is surprised by Bernard, who tackles him to the ground, but he grabs the knife and stabs the serial killer in the throat. Sinclair has discovered the exit and intends to escape safely, but Danny approaches from behind and shoots him in the forehead before Sinclair can react. Danny feels overjoyed now that he has avenged his brother's death and prevented the serial killer from killing again. However, he is unaware that the serial killer has survived and is following him, startling him by stabbing him in the shoulder. Bernard pushes him to the ground, kills him, then removes his eyes and stores them in one of his jars. The serial killer, safe and sound, has now collected more souls and will return home with $100 million. Thanks for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more of these recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.